Hey everyone, can't wait to introduce you to today's invited person. We are talking to Matt Dunford, the art director for Upper Deck. Welcome so much. We're going to have a lot to talk to you about today. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on the show today. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm always happy to chat with everyone, and it's just, wonderful. Joined by a couple of my closest friends, Wolverine, Psylocke, and Shadowcat over here, and just, just hanging out and about doing my thing.
Hi, Matt. It's great to talk to you today, but what we'd like to start with is first, how did you get interested in cards and art, and well, maybe just the whole comic book world as well? Has it always been since being a kid?
It actually does stem back from when I was a kid. As a child, one of the things that I was most passionate about back in the day was I was into pirates. I was really into pirates. I had an obsession with pirates. I would watch Peter Pan just about every day on VHS, and like stuff when Hook came out, and my favorite toys to play with. I loved the Playmobil pirate sets, but mainly I loved the Lego pirate sets, and the Lego pirate sets with Captain Redbeard and Governor Broadside and all those characters. I just had so much fun playing with those all the time. And of course, I was just, build Lego pirate sets and, play with them obsessively. And one day, when my parents actually got me a Lego pirate set that had a comic book included in it. And this is actually my first exposure to the world of comics. The thing is, it's all of a sudden I was presented with this item that showed that there was an actual story with these Lego pirate characters. And of course, I couldn't read at the time. I was still a little kid. And so I'd ask my parents to read this Lego pirate comic to me time and time and time and time again, until the point where they were just so fed up with me, like having to read this comic over and over again, that they got me hooked on phonics early. And I actually started reading because of this comic book, this one single comic, so I could read this comic over and over again. And so the year was 1992, and of course my parents wanted to continue reading. So I thought, okay, well, maybe we just take him down to Toys R Us again and just see if there was something that we could get him, for his new reading experience, something young adult. And then as I'm walking down one of the aisles, I spotted this shiny object, and it was a holographic cover that had Spider-Man on it. And of course, it was celebrating the 30th anniversary of Spider-Man. And can you believe this week we are now celebrating the 60th anniversary of Spider-Man? But it was 30 issues celebrating 30 years of Spider-Man, and I just looked at it and I'm like, I want that. I don't know what this is. I don't know anything about Spider-Man, but I started reading Spider-Man, and I tore through those issues just so fast and and I was so insane about them. That first issue that I had seen, there was that holographic cover of Spectacular Spider-Man 189, which was this story of Spider-Man and his ex-best friend, Harry Osborn, Harry kidnapping his own family, inviting Spider-Man to dinner, and talking about how he could never live up to the expectations of his father, the original Green Goblin. And it's my first introduction to these characters, and I was just compelled, and I loved it. And I just kept going at these issues. And so that I saw that, artwork in there from Sal Buscema, the writing of Jam DeMatteis, and it had this great pull-out poster by the great Charles Vess of Spider-Man chasing Hobgoblin across the New York City skyline, and all of it was just so compelling to me. And 1992 was a really great game changer year for the world of, getting kids introduced to superheroes, because it wasn't much longer after that the X-Men cartoon would come on, and before that a little Batman the Animated Series, because Batman Returns was everywhere in theaters. You couldn't escape the Happy Meal toys of Batman Returns. Darkwing Duck was another obsession, and then you get into like Power Rangers the next year. But it was in November 19th, 1994, when my fandom went into absolute overdrive, when I was exposed to the Spider-Man animated series. And that first episode there, The Night of the Lizard, really just threw my Spider-Man fandom in overdrive. And I've been called the world's biggest fan of the Spider-Man animated series. I've become good friends with showrunner John Semper, and considered the world authority on the cartoon. And I've just loved comics ever since. And I've just never stopped it. And it just kept it growing and growing and growing, and still grows.
So where did cards come into that after the comics? When did you discover?
The card thing wasn't so long after the comics, because as a kid, you're only given so much for your allowance, and you're exposed to these comic book stores where you wanted those expensive rare issues that were on the wall, and they were just like, wow, oh, it's $100, I can't afford that. And it was a time in the 90s when those single issues were priced very high because there weren't access to trade paperbacks where you could read these stories, but there was an alternate means of finding out about these characters, and that was through the trading card sets. And of course, it's just the height of X-Men popularity, 1992, 1993. So you'd have X-Men Series 1 and X-Men Series 2, that very Jim Lee, Joe Quesada, Ron Lim. X-Men cards were everywhere. You just couldn't escape them. You had to have the X-Men cards. And so that's where you learned the basis of these characters. I couldn't afford these issues, but I could afford, to get a couple packs of these cards, open them up. So I'd learn the characters, I'd see their power levels, I'd learn their secret identities, I'd learn like a little, like just what was going on with them. And they would have like certain key, aside from the character stuff, they would have certain stories that could go with these things. And it was all so incredible to me. And I just loved learning about the characters from the back of these trading cards, putting them in packs, trading them with my friends so I could complete these sets. And it was the coolest thing. And it was just so awesome.
So how did you go from that into actually it becoming a career for you? How did that come about?
The career field actually kind of just, it's weird. It almost happened like accident. And so by accident. So I collected comic books very much early on into, just all my life. And I've been a comic book reader, but it stems to a San Diego Comic-Con about 20 years ago when by accident, I ended up in this documentary that was being filmed. I went into a panel that morning where Stan Lee was being interviewed by two comic book historians, one guy named Don Swan and another guy named Derek Sprang. And unbeknownst to me, these comic book historians weren't actually comic historians. They were actually, actors, in this case, voice actors. Don Swan was actually Mark Hamill. It was actually, Luke Skywalker himself actually posing. They were actually making a mockumentary and talking about a fake comic book character called Commander Courage. And Derek Sprang was actually another voice actor named Tom Kenny, who you might know as the voice of SpongeBob. And they interviewed Stan on this panel and talked about this Commander Courage character, which was this character from the 1940s. It's sort of a Captain America knockoff. There were dime a dozen from the Timely Comics era. And they interviewed Stan for it. And then afterwards, Don Swan and his film crew came around and said, so what can you tell us about Commander Courage? And people would say nothing. And I was waiting around to get an autograph from Stan. I was waiting for his crowd to die down so I could have it. It's like, oh, can I get a Stan autograph? And then I'm ambushed by the camera crew, and Mark Hamill, and I didn't know it was him because he was in kind of disguise. He came up to me. He's like, "Excuse me, young man, what can you tell us about Commander Courage?" And I said, "Well, I don't have the strongest familiarity in the world with Commander Courage, but when it comes to the Timely Comic superheroes, the 1940s, I mean, when you think about the Wizard, when you think about the Black Marvel, the Thunderer, and Miss Marvel, and the Wizard, and I'm talking about these characters, and it's and how they tie in with Commander Courage, and then he's like, this kid knows more about Commander Courage than I do. And it's I didn't even know they made it up. But, I'd learned about those Timely Comics characters from my love of the Spider-Man animated series. There was a chapter on there called The Six Forgotten Warriors, where these superheroes from the 1940s came back to save the world after Captain America was resurrected from a time-space continuum to save Red Skull. So I learned about them after that. And then what happened there is I followed these guys around. They kind of revealed themselves to me that they were actually just making a fake movie, and it's we're actually cartoon voice actors. I'm like, oh my god, that's so cool. And all these people were people who did voices for cartoons, and I thought that was the coolest job in the entire world. So I tried to after realizing Mark Hamill was the voice of the Joker on the Batman, and I was I was a little more hyped about him being Hobgoblin on Spider-Man. That was my thing. And I was saying to myself, and I got to see them in action on a panel that night where they actually performed before an audience. I'm like, wow, these are the most entertaining people in the entire world. So I tried to do.
Who actually finally did realize that it was Mark Hamill that was there.
Yeah, he revealed himself to me, but it's like he had this big red beard, and I didn't actually like. I'm used to seeing him as Luke Skywalker. I didn't think he'd have like facial hair like that. I mean, but like he had been doing cartoon voices and stuff. So I thought, oh, cool, I can do it. So after I graduated high school 2 years later, I'm going to try to be a voice actor. I'm going to try. And I found out, like being a lot of acting stuff, it's very competitive. It's got a lot of things that you have to, and there's a reason why the same 25 or 30 people that you see in the credits are continually used over and over again, because they're the people at the top of their game, and it's very hard to break in. So I'm like, well, my dreams were kind of dashed. So I went back to college, start off in community college here in San Diego, and eventually transferred off to UC Santa Barbara. And I took a break down to Los Angeles one day to go to Meltdown Comics, and this was 2009, where they had a guest speaker that day. It was Len Wein, who you might know as the co-creator of Wolverine and of Swamp Thing. And Len was talking about doing the editorial work for Watchmen, because the Watchmen movie was coming out. And I heard about him speak, and this is the first time that I had heard about what a comic editor actually does. And all of a sudden, despite the fact that I've been reading comics all my life, I never once thought, wait a second, I could actually try for a career in comics, and I thought, here's something I can actually do. Because the way that Len talked about it, it was more like being in the director's seat. Instead of like, I always thought that being an editor was just being a glorified spell checker. And I spoke with him afterwards, and I said, how does one become a comic editor? He just said, learn everything you can about comics. Learn so much about comics that you can be a great comic historian. And I said, okay, cool. Be a comic historian first. So I started to expanding my horizons, not just being a Marvel zombie, but getting into DC, getting into Vertigo, getting into Image, expanding my horizons, learning about the creators, and taking opportunities to meet the people behind the scenes. So that was the summer of 2007, and I had just come back from the week before when they had the Pokemon World Championship tournament in San Diego, which I hadn't played Pokemon cards in 3 years, and I ended up winning the World Championship Ruby Sapphire tournament. Oh my
God.
So the humble world champion with his Nidoqueen Milotic Pidgeot deck. And the week after that, they were celebrating an event at San Diego, commemorating San Diego Comic-Con, which had celebrated its 40th anniversary the month before. So they had brought in some of the founding fathers of San Diego Comic-Con to a place called Mysterious Galaxy to talk about the foundation of Comic-Con. So I got to meet the founders of Comic-Con and learn about them and be part of the San Diego comic community and just learning their stories. And I was so incredibly fascinated by all this.
That's pretty incredible that you got to meet those people.
Yeah, and just to hear their stories, and it was just great to hear. And also, really, what happened from there is there was a panel I had attended, the Jack Kirby tribute panel at the 2009 Comic-Con. It had been 15 years since Jack Kirby had passed away, so people who had known him in life wanted to speak with him. And one of the people who was on the panel was a professor named Roger Friedman, who mentioned that he was a physics professor at UC Santa Barbara and one of the founding fathers of Comic-Con. And wait a sec, I go to UC Santa Barbara. So I went back to school the following quarter, and I actually would go to Dr. Friedman's office hours and interview him during his time, talk about the foundation of Comic-Con and learning about how things were in the 1970s. And this was just so innately fascinating to me, and I just couldn't stop with it. Also, having the fortune of being in Santa Barbara, I wasn't too far. About 20 minutes down the road was another town called Ojai, where, of course, the world's greatest cartoonist Sergio Aragonis lives. And so I had the pleasure of meeting Sergio Aragonis at museum exhibits, and it was just so fascinating to learn his stories. He would just hang out at the coffee shop and just talk comics with you while he was just drawing these things amazingly. And eventually it got to the point where I was about to graduate, and Roger Friedman actually asked me to be on a PhD dissertation committee for the UC Santa Barbara's first graduate in superheroology.
Okay, that's something
I'm like, And it's like, it's something I'd never even heard of either. I'm like, really? They offer that? I should have majored in that. But actually, he was actually pursuing it as a theater arts degree. The student named Kane Anderson, talking about why people dress up in costumes and save the day, and talking about it as a thing. And so Roger asked me to help out with some essay questions, talking about how the fundamentals of superhero history, not just things in general, but history as a whole. And so I'd come up with questions would be something like, when did you say the golden age of comics began, and what was the thing that ushered it in? And so if you could answer something like, oh, it ushered in with the debut of Action Comics #1 in 1938 with the appearance of Superman, creating the superhero. And when did the golden age end? And if you could say, when Dr. Frederick Wortham was, demonizing comic books and stuff like that. So I answered these questions, and all of a sudden I got in with, I had done my first professional gig doing something in comics, and it was great. And I'd worked alongside other comic book historians that I really looked up to. And from there, I moved back to San Diego, and I tried to see, okay, is there anything where I can do? And I found a comic book meetup online on meetup.com of all places, where your social life goes to commit suicide. And there's a comic meetup, and it's called the Semantic Comic Meetup. And I start up a conversation with some of the guys there. They think, wow, you're actually very knowledgeable about comics. And I ask, what's Semantic anyway? Oh, Semantic, well, we're actually a comic book publisher. Oh, really? I just finished college. I have nothing to do. Do you have any internships for a guy who wants to be an editor? And it turns out the guy I had been talking with all night actually was their publisher. And he says to me, why would you want to be an editor? Nobody wants to be an editor. I said, I think comic editorial is really cool. And I think it's great. And I chatted with him for more. He says, like, oh, okay, if you want to be an editor, I can, show you the ropes. So he showed me the fundamentals, and I continued to work my butt off. And I just, I made such amazing progress with the, few titles that I was given, that I eventually was appointed senior editor of Semantic Publishing, and when they rebranded into Keyleaf Comics. And after, a couple of years, sadly, Keyleaf Comics had to shut down. It just was a tough time. It was a tough economy, and I was disheartened. So I got a job working as a chauffeur, and, I still worked a day job driving around rich people all over town. And then eventually I still loved comics. So I'd still go to conventions. I'd still pick up books, and I would still go to these things. And I wasn't really ready to give up on that dream, but I still had to make ends meet. And then I learned about a place in San Diego that had just opened called Little Fish Comic Book Studio. Like, what? And I learned about it. And the executive director there, Alonzo Nunez, had just graduated from the School of Visual Arts in Manhattan, where he studied under David Mazzucchelli and Klaus Janson and Phil Jimenez, just to name a few. Wonder Woman Amazonia by Phil Jimenez, just nominated for an Eisner. Check it out. It's gorgeous. And so I kind of just barged down the door. I'm saying, what is this place? Tell me about it. Tell me everything about it. I don't know what I can do here. I can't really draw, but I can help. And so I had this opportunity to help out with the kids, to help cultivate the library, to help build a following with, and it was really cool. And then eventually I was appointed as president of the board, which I served on for 6 years. And during the meantime, while I'm still doing that, there's another convention that the founders of San Diego Comic-Con started called San Diego Comic Fest, which was done with the spirit of the original Comic-Con, a small intimate atmosphere, but when they went to the 40th Comic-Con, it's like, they're back in the new San Diego Comic-Con. It's a lot bigger than what they were used to. And they said, we kind of miss the old days. So they did Comic Fest. And the first couple of years of Comic Fest were off to, you'll take your baby steps before you learn to walk. But I decided to join the group as a volunteer. And, I said, well, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. Wait, that doesn't work, but you could do this. And showing that, like, how to bring things up to speed, how to make things cool, bringing in this, infusing it with the greatness of comic history to show that it doesn't have to just be like an old timey thing. You can integrate new time and find the balance in between, because comic book history should be exciting. It should be fun, and you can still have this thing. And eventually, after a couple of years of working with that, they said, Matt has been so helpful. We want to appoint him as the chairman of San Diego Comic Fest. So I said, you really want to give me the reins doing this? And so I've been serving as chairman of San Diego Comic Fest since 2017. We've done things, we've celebrated the centennial of of Jack Kirby, 200 years of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. We've had guests of honor that range from Sergio Aragonis, Bill Sienkiewicz, J. Michael Straczynski, Peter David, and like we've had Wendy Peeney and Richard Peeney, and so many wonderful these giants of the comic industry. And I'm allowed to bring these people in and integrate them into a convention experience where they get to mingle with fans, where they get to tell their story, and people just get to have this great experience with comic creators that just lasts a weekend where they're just hanging out, having a good time, and everyone just says, they keep saying, it's my favorite convention. It's my favorite convention. I'm like, I really wasn't expecting that, but yeah. So that's my story of like the stuff.
You have really and truly just gone where your heart has taken you from day one. Yes. And you have obviously gotten a lot of knowledge in your comic book history. And as you mentioned before, you're also a bit of a World War II historian. Well, probably yes. A lot of a historian of that. We'll get into that a little bit later. All of this amazing stuff that you brought with you, it must be like, how did you get into being an art director for Upper Deck? Upper Deck doesn't really have much to do with comic books.
Well, the whole thing there is Upper Deck as a trading card company. Of course, they started off with sports cards in the late 1980s and doing like a baseball set that I believe, and often, doing a lot of sports memorabilia stuff. But although, they do have several different licenses that they maintain for trading card and memorabilia properties. I mean, they also do stuff with like Blizzard. So we have Overwatch. And of course, as you can tell here, we do have the Marvel Comics license as well. So there is a great legacy of trading cards that goes back to the Marvel masterpiece, the Fleer, the Flare, and all these characters. And I collected Marvel cards hardcore throughout the early 90s to the late 90s. But of course, when the late 90s hit, there's this little game that popped up on the scene called Pokemon. And it's interesting how you can look at like my storage unit where it's like, wow, you have all these toys, Star Wars toys, Spider-Man toys, Spider-Man, and it just stops in early 1999. Like, where did it all go? All went into Pokemon. I diverted my entire attention because all my allowance was like buying Pokemon cards. And, I had mainly done Pokemon from 1999 through 2006 when I was a competitive Pokemon player and had my brief little world championship come back in 2009. But Upper Deck has, gone on consistently as an amazing company, showing great memorabilia and cultivating the Marvel comic licenses. And I think they've done kind of a great job. And I will admit that I was a little disconnected from the trading card world because I mainly was a comic book guy. And it's an interesting story of how this all happened. So, and Comic Fest has always just been a volunteer thing. It's like I don't get paid for Comic Fest. It's just like it's a passion project, and so it's it shows my love of comics. But I always worked day jobs to make a living. So over the years, I had gone from being a chauffeur, and then I ended up as a writer at this online publication called World War Wings, writing about military history. And then I had jumped and gotten a job over at this video game publisher called Critivo, working as a PR and marketing guy at this video game company. And then, at Critivo, we're preparing to set up for E3 and Game Developer Conference and all these like different conventions. And then COVID hit. And then all of a sudden you can't prepare to do, conventions because all the conventions are being canceled. And so, with my job, it really wasn't necessary for me to be there. So they had to cut off a finger to save the hand. So I find myself without a job, kind of just floating around, playing Animal Crossing and eating ice cream sandwiches all day during COVID. I think we all experienced that. So it was depressing. I put on some weight and got, really, disheartened by the whole COVID experience. I mean, I can't go outside or I'll get cooties, but I'm staying inside playing Animal Crossing all day. And then, just months into the quarantine order, it's just, I look at, maybe I can get a new job somewhere instead of just being on unemployment this whole time. And I kind of just see it, an Upper Deck thing. And I just say, there's a job here. This looks like a dream job. Like working with the Marvel comic trading cards, probably going to be 6 billion other people applying for this job. I'm not going to get it, but just go on LinkedIn, click easy apply, click. Anyway, the next day, I thought I was going to have, I'm just sitting around doing nothing and I can't really do anything. I got a call on my phone and I didn't recognize the number. It's calling at 5:15 p.m. It's like, those aren't office hours or anything. I think it's like one of those car extended warranty calls. And it's like, hello? Hi, this is Matt Dunford speaking. And right as about to push the end button, it's like, hi, this is Tim from Upper Deck. Oh, hi. My mood perked up. I see you applied for the position of talent relations coordinator at Upper Deck Entertainment. Would you be available for an interview tomorrow? I'm like, yes, I have some availability at 2 p.m. if that works for you. And he's like, sure. And so I hop on the call and I speak with him. I told him the story that I just told you about my experience. And they said, how do you feel working with this many people? It's like, well, I'm an art director. I've been an editor before. I've been a convention organizer before. I've been a writer. I've been this thing. And it's like, and all of a sudden, as I'm talking with him, every bit of life experience that I have put together in my different roles through my different careers, whether it's something that works me by in a day job or a passion project, was just united under one thing. And he said, you are so ridiculously overqualified for this job. I mean, it's like, are you sure you want this? I mean, why wouldn't I? And they say, well, we do work with athletes. It's like, would you be the kind of guy that wants to get a selfie with an athlete or something like that? And it's like, no, I'm not really interested in sports. And the thing is, you have to stand out. You don't need to be that guy with someone. I mean, even in my experience, I mean, I work with, people like Bill Sienkiewicz and Peter David and J. Michael Straczynski and like these great people that I call hero. But what's even cooler? I just get to call them friend because I just don't behave like that. They show that I am authentic in my thing and that I am ahead in my own purposes. And I like that. And they said, okay, we have several hundred other candidates to interview and we have to keep moving on. But thank you for your time. So a couple of hours pass. And I'm like, they have so many other candidates. They're going to find someone more qualified for me. I can't do it. And then eventually get a call 2 hours later, pick it up. Hello? Hi, Matt. It's Tim from Upper Deck. We kind of realize, even though we have so many other candidates to go through, we'd ultimately be wasting our time. We want to make you an offer. And I'm like,
oh my God. You know what? I have to interject here. I have to interject really quickly. This is very inspiring. First of all, I didn't know that the LinkedIn quick apply actually works.
Me neither. Me neither. It's like, I was just like, I don't feel like rehashing the whole thing. It's like, just like using those power words where, I emphasize spearhead. And it's like a lot of that stuff. And then it's like, yeah, you see.
Secondly, I really want to say that, you've been going through a lot of your life experiences and you've done so many different things. And a job, an opportunity presented itself that you made yourself available for to take. That's inspiring to any of us, I think.
Yeah, and it's like, and I just like didn't think in my wildest dreams that I would have something like this. And I always told myself if I had a career that allowed me to cultivate and help creators, I would work my butt off every single day to make sure that everyone is properly taken care of and accommodated. Because unfortunately, this guy right here taught me a lot of things about great power and great responsibility. I've been given power, but I can't turn my back on anyone. I have to be there for them, and I have to be there for. And even if you are doing a project with us for a short while or something like that, or just coming on through, it's like I'm making sure I roll out the red carpet, that everyone is taken care of, and that everyone is done. And so, because I mean, I could have stayed in video games or something and made more money, but it's like I don't really play a lot of video games. I love comics. This is where I'm happy. This is where I'm comfortable. And I want to be doing something that I genuinely enjoy. It's never been about money. It's just been about doing something that's really cool.
So you must have organizational skills to be organizing Comic-Cons and, like you say, keeping up with all the artists and everything.
Yeah, I mean, the ultimate thing that does happen there is it does eat up a lot of my free time. And one of the things that when you're, going out of your way, not only just, working this job and, helping creators along their path and, being so active in your own community, it does eat up a lot of the free time. And one of the things that I just don't have time for quite as much for is reading comics. I wish I had more time to read comics, but, I can say I've read more than 60,000 in my life. and it's what got me to, be where I am today. And I still feel like it's just not enough, but it's just the way my life is right now. And I would like to sit down, be able to read, but I've become a busy man, having to do, one thing after the other, because I just cannot turn my back on someone. Sorry, Spidey taught me too well about that.
So I'm guessing that your favorite comic book ever would be one of the Spider-Man.
Yeah, Spidey is my guy. I definitely do love Spider-Man, but that's not to say that I'm not without other characters that I absolutely love. I mean, this week we're celebrating the 60th anniversary of Spider-Man, and it's always a great thing. But other characters that I enjoy coming out of the UK, this is Marine Man by my good friend Ian Churchill. Just earlier this week, Marine Man is finally back after a 12-year absence. He actually came back to celebrate and help out with UN World Ocean Day. And so it's just really wonderful to see that, characters that, do things for a good cause and are very helpful. It's going through. So, but, I love all kinds of comics. I read Marvel, I read DC, I read independent, Dark Horse, manga, you name it. Like, I just wish I had more time for it. And anyone who sees my home just sees it's like, wow, you've got like every Marvel omnibus edition and DC absolute. And I'm always in comic stores, bookstores, and all those things. I will pick up books from independent creators at convention halls and do everything. So it's just like I just continue my comic education all the time. It's never ending because education is a never ending journey.
This is absolutely right. I've 1,000,000 degree. I totally agree with you on that. Your job, before we get into one of the main questions I want to ask you, one little one, your job as an art director, do you find it difficult to deal with a lot of different artists in between dealing with movie studios, and rights, art rights and image rights and all that kind of thing?
Movie studio stuff is the not exactly the fun part of my job, but the fun part of my job is working with the individual creators because I really like you guys. You guys are the people that really make my job. And the thing is, I love working with multiple artists because it shows me just how much versatility, how much creativity, and how inspiring that you guys can be to pull this through, hitting those deadlines, working these jobs and doing these things. And I know not everyone is just doing these projects. They're sometimes doing these projects to, get them to the next step up. There might still be working a normal day job or other projects, and it's the fact that they're still balancing this with other art duties, and it's just great to see. And I always love it when I get to see the finished project because that's the thing, you're kind of working with a blank slate. There's nothing there, nothing there, nothing there, and then I get to see like all these great artists draw these superhero characters and come to life, and I'm like, hello old friends, it's so nice to see you. And it just brings a big smile to my face when I see like all the creativity and all the humor. Like it's such a great range that these creators come up with between action, between humor. And it's just so exciting to, that this is, being part of the finished product. And it's something that, the fans are going to enjoy most. And I mean, I wish I, could keep it all for myself, but nope, you got to get it out there. It's for the fans. The fans are the people that matter the most because they're the people keeping this alive. And, we got to do this for them.
So is that one of the highlights of your job when your inbox is full of emails, full of scans for you to look at?
Yeah, it's really fun just to see everything. And then I get to, oh, I love what you did there. I love what you did there. And it's like, oh, thing. And then it's like, oh, you brought in Scarlet Spider. How do you know I'm a big 90s Spider-Man fan? It's stuff like that. Really, yeah, that really keeps inspiring me.
Wow.
I would like to move on to one thing. I had seen that you put a post a few days ago, or a couple of weeks ago, actually, I think it was, on Facebook concerning the subject of autism. Now, that's, of course, a huge, huge subject and something that I think both Lindsay and I are super interested in as it applies to so many different people and creative people. Why did you want to share your story with the world? Why did you want to share the fact that you were on the spectrum with the world? What pushed you to become public with that?
Sometimes you just get tired of hiding, and you should live a life with nothing to hide. And, really the way that things go with this kind of stuff is you should just be who you are and don't be afraid of who you are. And don't be afraid to be different. There's always going to be differences for the world. I mean, there's a reason I am why I am. And and I know there's a lot of people out there that don't know how to deal with people on the spectrum. I said, there is a way. It's just like, it's not a malfunction. It's a different operating system. And, you can be accommodating to these things. People on the spectrum, more than likely, they are going to, have very narrow yet intense focuses. And for me, it's like Spider-Man, it's Pokemon. Like, you'll find that every autistic person is into Pokemon. It's literally catered toward, autistic kids. And so, like, I'm one of them and I, used, and a lot of parents, they say, well, I don't know how to reach out to my child. Here, let me reach out to them for you. And it's like, hey, what are you into? Oh, I like Minecraft. Cool. You want to tell me about Minecraft? And they'll just like tell you every little bit of knowledge in the world. And it's like, how did you do that? Engage them. It's like you're too busy trying to get them into one thing, but you're not taking the time to see what they're into. What is their focus? What are they going with? And so what are they going to do? And you have to realize we're comfortable in one thing. And so to break out of the comfort zone into something new, that takes a lot of effort. So because getting into new things is uncomfortable, for me, in my case, it's what if I like it? That's kind of intimidating, because then I'll feel like I have to learn every last little thing about it, and I may not have that kind of time in my life. And so it's, I kind of get stuck in my ways, and I'm, very open about that. But, little by little, get out to something new, break into these things, and just ultimately, this is who I am. This is what I am. And I'm not ashamed of who I am.
What is the main thing that you would like people who are not on the spectrum to know about people who are?
Their differences are going to be their greatest abilities. And I have never thought of it as a disability. It's a different ability. And you give them a chance, I bet you, if you put them in the right role, they could be so much better at it than you could ever be. It's just bringing out that strength in them. It's just bringing out that internalization and learning that, that we can, find ways to do things the right way, and showing that, we're not weirdos, we're not freaks. It's just who we are. And yeah, I mean, we're all different in one way, shape, or form. And we may not be as, the social creatures that we can't be. But so it's easier for you to reach out to us than it is for us to reach out to you, because, we're shy by nature. I may not seem it, but, I am actually quite shy. I still have a lot of these tendencies. I tend to avoid eye contact. There's actually a reason for that. In the autistic brain, actually, if you lock eye contact with someone, you'll look away, because it activates an internal threat sensor. It makes you feel like you're being challenged. So if I am making eye contact with you, that means it's like, oh, it's on. That means challenge accepted with me. And it's like, I know more about Spider-Man the animated series than you. Oh, do you?
Look to my eyes, bring it on. Do you think then, would there be a way to articulate, say, your thought processes with, say, a regular working day? When you get to work, do you get in the office and think, right, I've got this, boom, boom, boom? How do you?
And I've always got, a list of things to do. And it's always first and foremost about helping people and being quick on the response, because I know that everyone, I do not like to keep people waiting. I do not like to people, I got to make sure that things are done accurately, quickly, and so I can continue to be helpful to the people who are giving in the effort to do these things. And I want to make sure that
Because you're on this, because you're on the spectrum, how do you attack that list of things to do? Is there a particular way that you like to set things up so that you can get it done in a more comfortable way?
For me, it's always just like working with from small to big. You take your baby steps. What is the easy task? Can this be handled right now? Does this involve other people, that I have to consult to make sure that this is done correctly? And I mean, I don't exactly have the permission that I wish I could do everything on my own, but unfortunately, sometimes I have to follow protocols and stuff like that. So it's making sure I, am going out of my way to help, but it's just like small thing, big thing, priority, timing, and it's just like a different organization of what you have to put everything together. And I still make sure at the end of the day that everyone is helped, that, I've, taken every call, done every meeting, answered every email. And it's a good feeling to leave on a blank slate. I will never, leave with unfinished work. Everything gets done.
Wow.
Okay.
Dedication. How do you cope with it when things go wrong? I mean, for example, my son, we've been talking recently about getting him tested because he shows quite a few signs, as do I, but he's a bit more, you know, but he tends to melt down when things go wrong.
I know it's not everyone handles pressure so well, and I've learned to handle pressure and to work under pressure, because you can do things perfectly, but eventually there is going to be a thing. Someone's going to get mad at you, someone's going to blow up in your face, and you got to think back on certain lessons that you do learn from superheroes. I can't let their upset nature affect me. Something like one of the greatest lessons I learned from Captain America. He had been spoken in Ed Brubaker's run. Any move made in anger is always the wrong one.
That's very good advice.
So you need to learn things calmly and collectively. Do a calculated decision on how to resolve a conflict, how to make things. Sometimes people won't see your way, but sometimes you have to see eye to eye. Easier said than done when you're bad at eye contact, but it's just something. It's just part of a resolution nature. And I'm not sure if I am an anxious person. I really don't know. I might be anxious because I'm just, I do think about problems, but it's like still solving. So it's like problem solving. I can find ways to solve these problems and make things right. And you can't fix every problem in the entire world, but it's still got to put in the effort to try, because not every superhero wins every conflict, but you still need to step forward and make that effort.
You have found a way to take your experiences and your passion for things and use it as a way to interpret your world through them. Then that is the way that you've managed. Have you changed since you, as you grow through life? I would imagine you learn different things and you learn to adapt.
Yes, because it's always about stepping out of your comfort zone.
Okay.
New situations are always incredibly intimidating to me. I have never gone into a new role where haven't felt uncomfortable. I'll just be I'll be absolutely quiet. I won't say anything at first, but as I develop comfort, I develop experience, I develop expertise, and that's when you have me, becoming a loudmouth and bouncing off the walls. That's how you can tell I'm comfortable in a situation, because I've established comfort. And sometimes maybe it's establishing control, but sometimes control makes me comfortable in what I do. To show that I know what I'm doing in a situation, and I like that I can bring some bit of control in there, and I don't have control over everything. I like, as much as I would like to, of course, I would like to be a Dr. Doom figure someday, because what's Dr. Doom's motivation? He wants to rule the world, but simply because he knows he could do a better job of it. And I know I'm not going to go into every situation doing it, but sometimes, I could say, I could make this better. I could improve this. That's how I do it. And it's not just like, you don't just turn the world around like that. You have to take your baby steps. It's always important to keep your eye on the top of the mountain, but you have to reach for a lower ledge. And I'm perfectly comfortable starting at the summit. Like, even at my job right now, I'm not the president of the company here. I'm a talent relations coordinator, and I love, doing what I do, and I love working with these people. So I'm working my way up. I'm establishing comfort in my role and working with people. And through these collaborations with the people here at my office, with the people who are creating our projects, and as long as I gain familiarity and comfort and, learn the protocols, the do's and the don'ts, and I learn how to improve things as we go through. And each step along the way helps me to climb.
How do you deal with the situation that when you feel like you're in a situation that you cannot control, you're not comfortable, you feel aggression around you? How do you deal with that?
It's always most important to stay calm, to look for a resolution. It's not always the easy one. Sometimes it's, it requires a struggle. Sometimes situations cannot be resolved immediately. Sometimes they do take time, and sometimes you can't always do it alone. So situations with aggression. Lord knows I'm familiar with way too many of them. But it's still alleviating conflict, finding the peace, finding the comfort in zone, not only just finding your own comfort, but helping others to find theirs. And just, you don't have to be a hero about it. You don't have to be a hero about everything. I don't go into this situation saying, oh, I need to be a hero. No, it's just doing the right thing is what gets people to call you a hero. You don't get to call yourself a hero. That's something that other people get to do for you.
Very interesting perspective. What advice would you give to people who feel they don't have that help handy? Where would you suggest they go?
There's a number of resources online. You could always, seek, a therapist or, just neurodivergent counseling, because, not everyone may know. I have a lot of people that come out to me like later in life just saying, hey, I just found out that I'm on the spectrum. Do you have any advice that you could give to me? And it is difficult because, I just have to say, follow your passions. The things you love that you have those narrow fixations on, you're into them for a reason. And if you can find a way to share them with the world, even, it's, if you can make money off it, cool. But, still the most important thing is just to continue sharing them and you like what you like for a reason. And there is an intriguing part about it. And, I guess I was fortunate with my parents to, give me resources that did help me throughout the ages. And I didn't even realize I was being helped or that really I needed help. It was just normal for me. But a lot of it I had to kind of just figure out on my own. I couldn't have that crutch along the way. I still had to learn to stand on my own. And here I am, a 36-year-old adult, in a great career, helping to, further my own community, doing something I love. But most importantly, I think the thing that I'm doing that is most rewarding is helping others along the way to do something that they love. And, I know it's not the easiest path in the world for a career in comics. Trust me, I busted my butt for the better part of a decade to get where I am now. And now that I have this opportunity to help people out, to get a foot in the door, to take their first steps, and if I get you up and running and to the point where you say it's like, okay, I'm done here, I'm on to the next thing, like, congratulations and I wish you well. And I said, I'm happy that I could be part of the journey, and that's the important thing with me.
Does it make you more comfortable to think about other people rather than what's going on with you? A lot of what you said
it does make me more comfortable that way, because and I think about it like, comics, as much as I love them, they are a bit of escapism. They are, to take you out of your own world for a while and give you comfort in another one. I think it's just kind of gotten to the point where my own life has become more interesting than the comics I read, because I'm always busy. I've always got something to do. And I think about it and I say, like, geez, Spider-Man, how do you do it? Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I learned it from you. And it's just like what Spidey says. It's like, you've got your life, you've got your personal life, you've got this, and it's like, but yet he still manages, to save the day and to, make his personal life work and, do a day job, all while juggling women and defeating superheroes, supervillains. So yeah.
I would be very surprised if you haven't got a "What Would Spidey Do" t-shirt.
Yeah, I mean, I know I've got one in there somewhere. It's like as you might tell, I have a lot of Spider-Man shirts.
So you've managed to very successfully take what other people might call a weakness and turn it into a strength, when in the end, we're all just a little different. And we really need to just kind of slow down, sit down, just get to know each other, and then move on from there, instead of saying, well, you don't fit into this shape of a box, I don't want to deal with you. It's a matter of how we really just need to be able to slow down a little bit and say hello to people.
And ultimately, I don't want to be like everyone else. I want to be my own person, and I want to do things for my own way, because I know if I was doing things the same way as before, it just wouldn't get me anywhere. It would always just be something dumb. I'll take like an example of a good friend of mine, Bill Sienkiewicz. That guy never draws the same way twice. He always finds ways to change things up, and that's why he's the most talented artist working in comics today. And it's weird I get to call him friend, and that, you know, he'll just like, you know, just pop on my Facebook status and like start like, you know, just making jokes at me and stuff, and like, geez, you have the biggest artist on the planet just, you know, just clowning on you. And everyone, and a lot of these artists that I work with are just like, I just saw your Facebook status, and all of a sudden like Bill Sienkiewicz just posting, it's like, yeah, we're homies. It's like, you're friends with them. Yeah. Guest of Honor Comic Fest 2020. It was great. Yeah. And like, and you know, I just want to be familiar and friendly with everyone. It's like, I would rather make friends, you know, than anything. It's like, I just want people to share the stuff I love with. And I mean, if you want to talk X-Men or Spider-Man, Pokemon, The Simpsons, cartoons, or whatever, I'm up for anything. And I'm always, you know, up for learning something new. It's intimidating for me to start something new, but if you take the time to reach out with me, I'm always going to be there for it.
That is really, really awesome. Before we close out on this, would you like to kind of discuss a little bit your fascination with the world, with the war, the history of war?
With World War II history, actually, it didn't start as a fascination. It started just as a job. It's like, okay, I'll take a writing job. Okay, cool. I'm in a World War II writer's role. I realized I kind of don't know anything about World War II. But then, of course, I had to just, because it was a career path. And the thing is, if you get one detail wrong about stuff, those World War II aficionados will tear you to shreds. So I had to make sure that when I was doing it, my knowledge was not being torn to shreds. It's like, you know, check out this, you know, B-29 with its, you know, just like shiny chrome interior. Like people are like, chrome wasn't invented until 1956 because chromium wasn't infused to paint and stuff. The littlest details like that really like start fixating you on stuff. And so the problem is I had to learn every last thing I could about World War II history, the military uniforms, the aviation, the politics, this sort of thing. And it gets to the point where I have become so knowledgeable about World War II history that I can't even do World War II history fiction anymore because it just infuriates me so much to see like the inaccuracies. I went to go see Dunkirk. I walked out of it. I'm like, why is the British like army full of white guys? 2/3 of these guys were Indian soldiers. There's I don't see a single brown person on this beach. And I walked out. I'm out of there. And it's like, I hear a dive bomber sound. I'm like, that's not a Stuka one. That's not a Stuka. That's not a, and you know, I do want to support a lot of the comics of creators that I enjoy. It's like, all right, here's the new Rocketeer stuff from IDW celebrating 40th anniversary. They're doing a world race, and the German pilot is flying a Comet ME 163. The Comet was not created that early in the war. It was a late game secret weapon meant to fly up very high so it could try to shoot at a B-29, a B-17 bomber. Sorry, the B-29 was mainly used in the Japanese conflict, not over Germany. So a B-17 bomber, so it could reach that aviation. However, the thing about the Comet is the way they're using it in the Rocketeer is it is being used in a world race. That thing only had enough fuel to try to make it up to the atmosphere and back. And the thing is, that thing actually needed to drain out all of its fuel on the way back down, because if it still had fuel when it landed, if it landed wrong, the fuel was so combustible that it would probably just explode upon landing. So stuff like that. And I hate how there's certain things that will really, really irk me, especially in comic books. So like, say, for example, if you go to look at
pretty much the size of the nuts and bolts of every single one that's in them. And he will mess with you if you change one of them. It's pretty.
Do you find that you have a great memory for details, or is it just that you're so enthusiastic about stuff?
I do know how picky nerds are, especially comic book nerds. If you get you know, one detail wrong, because I read so many comic books, I would notice when people are getting the details wrong, and that's what made another thing that made me want to be an editor. So you're not taking people out of the experience, so you can get those details right. And I mean, there'd be, you know, cases back when I was editing comics, and you know, there'd be like a scene in Egypt, and I say like, you see this blade right here? What have you done wrong? I drew it accurate to the period. What are you doing? You've colored it gray. They didn't have iron in Egypt. They had bronze. Color it brown.
Oh, gosh.
Stuff like that is going to irk me.
What would your future dream project be? What would you really like to accomplish in the future?
What I'd like to accomplish in the future. I love trading cards, and it's been a wild ride getting back in, but I still kind of miss the whole comic ride. I miss the sequential story. Like the comic industry is an ecosystem, so it needs a balance of all things. I mean, like, it needs, toys and cards and video games and movies and stuff. But, for me, I think it's still the written word meets art is still the best and most important prolific thing that we do need for this medium, because it's inspiring the rest of it. And trading cards are great. I love them. I collect them, but it's like ultimately kind of like a still image. I like when the images move from one image to another. I think, wouldn't it be cool if we did like a trading card / comic set where people could collect the entirety of, like, the comics, but it tells a story along the way. And I think that's never been done. That would be cool. I don't know if I have the authority to make that kind of a decision. It would take a long and differing process, but I thought that would be actually pretty cool to see.
I think same idea just then. I think that's a really good idea.
Oh, yeah.
Something different. You were saying earlier about, you'd found out about these different characters on your X-Men cards and whatever. Yep. So why not a story to follow?
Yeah, and it's really really cool to see. And even though it's like I had memorized every character's secret identity, all their facts, all their stats, and one of the most disheartening things that I learned, those early 1990s Marvel stats of like Spider-Man has 500 wins and 200 losses. Turns out they made them up, and it was like,
oh no.
Go through and count them properly.
Yeah, and I learned the story of it. It's like they say, yeah, like, what, you think we were actually making them up? No. It's like, no, we weren't reading every single issue. Like the people who actually, I talked to to some of the people who had worked at, like, I guess it was Flair, but they were mainly Marvel people back in the day. They, like, had helped cultivate the trading card line. We were not looking at every single Marvel comic back in the day to get those numbers. We just made them up. So it would be something that would reflect the cards. Instead of just having an empty backing, it'd be something like baseball stats, where you could see, oh, I need this guy because he wins the most. And so it's something like that, but it did make it cooler.
Interesting.
But incorrect.
It's cool, but it's incorrect.
That's just not comfortable. We're going to have to slowly finish this out, unfortunately, because this is absolutely fascinating. And now that you've mentioned your story by trading card, I can't wait for you to come out with that. You must get going on that.
Yeah, but of course that means I have to, jump through hoops to make things happen. It's like, I say, it's a dream. It's a dream project, but I guess
you can do it.
I've followed my dreams this far. Why not keep them going?
Absolutely.
Making a proposal, is there?
Lindsay, do you have anything else you'd like to ask?
I don't. This has been absolutely. I could talk to him for ages. It's been fascinating.
Okay. Would you agree to come back on at a future time?
Absolutely. I'm having a blast here. It's like, I know I'd like, because that's my thing. It's like, I can't, tell all of my stories in 1 hour. Like, it's like, I'm too much of a windbag.
It would be awesome. I would really like to reach out to you again, or reach out to us, either one, but would really love to have you back and have more of your stories, because it's just fascinating. You're obviously, overall, in my opinion, a story lover. I think that's really your top of the top thing. It's important to you, and I can't wait to hear more from you.
Quite a lot of philosophy in there as well, with your great responsibility, and those rules have kind of helped guide you, haven't they?
Yeah, they've helped me along the way, every way of the way. But it's just, you take a lesson, you learn a new lesson, you have a failure, you learn a lesson from it. But it's important to keep learning, and ultimately to, keep going and, dust yourself off. Easier said than done. Live your life, just don't hurt people along the way, and, make things better every single you can. And an important life lesson that I've learned, and I'll leave you all with this. A lot of people kind of just do things in life to push themselves forward. Me, I've done things to push people forward. And when you've pushed someone forward, you've pushed yourself forward a little bit. So those little baby steps that are helping people will help you in the end.
That's
Absolutely. I agree.
Where can
Awesome.
people find you?
You can find me at Facebook. Just look up Matt Dunford. I'm the guy with you'll find me. I'm the guy with a lot of selfies and a lot of Simpsons memes put up there. You can also find me on Instagram at Matt Dunford. Twitter at Matt Dunford. I'm not quite as active there. And if you like fun facts about comic book history, just look up on TikTok for San Diego Comic Fest, where I'm talking about fun fact every day till we're bigger than Comic-Con. Did you know? Did you know? Did you know?
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. This has been absolutely fascinating. I wish you every best thing in the world, and I can't wait to have you back on.
All right. And thank you so much for having me on. It's been an absolute delight.
Oh,
Love you, Matt. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.